Welcome, welcome, welcome once again, friends, neighbors, enemies, and frenemies to the Leo and Larry Show, the place that tells you the things you need to know and tell you the places where you need to go for progress, success, health, wealth, and a better life and community. And as always, we have another fantastic guest. So many wonderful people in South Carolina, this country, and around the world who are making a difference. And today we have Mr. Paul Black, who is the senior organizer for North and South Carolina with the South Carolina chapter of the Sierra Club. Ooh, South Carolina Sierra Club, but you're doing work in North Carolina. Paul, what you getting ready to do? Make one Carolina again the way it used to be? Welcome.
Thanks, Rev. I'm working with National, so it's just I work with the chapter, but I'm technically working for National. But if I could combine them, I'd just call it Best Carolina.
Okay. I hear you. I hear you. So Paul, you've done quite a few things working with different organizations in different communities uh, throughout the state. And now you're working with the national. You're, as Loretta Slater would say, you're in high cotton. Tell us something about yourself, what you're doing, what you've done, and how you've come to the work that you're doing today.
All right. It's been a long journey, but so yeah, I found myself here after I got involved in this work from just the political sphere initially. So as you know, I'm from Florence, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm not too far down the road. Effingham, to be more precise, but I have a lot of family over in North Florence. Um, and I always like to say the folks where I'm from, people are environmentalists and conservationists. They just don't know it. It's just called common sense. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the same way you don't leave your trash on the side of the road or dump a couch in the middle of off the side of a dirt field or a dirt road or something like that. That's just conservation in a more basic form without all the fancy titles. So I like to say I've always been a conservationist, but it was only after I got out of school when I was working in the political space, worked for the Democratic Party, and I started to see where I can have more of an impact helping folks with issues that they considered bigger than themselves, issues that they really needed help with. For, and it really came to a head around 2015 when Hurricane Matthews came through and folks really started to feel the impact of climate change. So,
Mm-hmm.
so everything was like I started working with I was working with the state, but at that point, just doing outreach work in a variety of ways. At that time, I was doing diversity outreach with the Department of Natural Resources, but then I went to work for this organization that was helping with it was like a joint program between FEMA and Department of Mental Health, helping folks recover like both physically and mentally and emotionally from natural disasters. It was called Carolina United. Um, but with that, I was able to see firsthand the impact of climate change, not just at the cause of the incident or after the big disaster, but what happens months later or a year or two later, how that has it's still impacting folks, and be it either something like a leak in the roof that just gets worse and worse and worse, to something like people who've lost their homes due to flooding and are still trying to get back on their feet, or just dealing with the trauma of a traumatic event and helping them find the resources they need to get back on their feet in any way, shape, or form. So after doing that type of work for a while, playing cleanup essentially, I wanted to do something to get to the root of the problem in the way using the tools that I have of speaking with folks, getting to know, be in the community, and uh, essentially talking a whole bunch. So I ended up in the environmental nonprofit space, the environmental advocacy space, trying to address climate change and the causes of it head on in the ways that we can. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like so
Well, yeah. And is it and climate change is getting worse, right? I mean, boy, what was this month Sunday? a few days ago, they had a Oklahoma area, that part of the country, they had 150 tornadoes in a couple of days, and I think they had 13 of them like 2 days ago, which is basically telling us what about climate change, and then how does conservation fit in or can help with that, Paul?
Oh, well, definitely. You're right. These extreme weather phenomena are based off climate change. I mean, they are caused by climate change. There's instability, these, you know, freak disasters, they're all being fueled by the same engine. And when it comes to addressing climate change, conservation, it does so by trying to put a brake uh on the damage that we are causing to the planet. It's like um by like I know it may sound to some folks it can sound a little bit corny, like reuse, reduce, recycle, and all that, but what we're doing has an impact. The amount of buildings we have everywhere has an impact. The amount of infrastructure we're building, the amount of trees we're cutting down, the amount of just general land we're using, it has an impact. And I'm not saying, that we need to stop, you know, developing or stop everything, but we need to do so conservatively. We need to do so in a sense that, I mean, and conserve what we can. We don't need to cut down every tree. We don't need to, you know, pave over everything. And conservation in the broadest terms is just preserving, preserving what
Mhm.
we have and making it last for future generations. So,
Right. Mhm.
so I,
Yeah, I can remember, and you're a young fellow, you probably heard about this, but I remember when, oh boy, we didn't call it conservation, but we reused stuff. I mean, we had our glasses for company, and then if you had a mayonnaise jar, jelly jar, whatever, you let that soak in the water. You took the label off it. That's what you drank out of on a
mhm.
day-to-day basis. So the cans on the back of the stove where you put the used oil, the used grease. You had a can for fish and a can for chicken and bacon. And what amazes me today, how people will use oil once and then throw it out. But you'll go to McDonald's or Burger King or some other restaurant and you're ordering food, and do you think they actually change the oil every time they cook a meal? Right? So that's the kind of thing you're talking about also, right? On small scale.
Oh, definitely. There's a term for like the way that you and I both grew up. It's technically called forced conservation, where like we conserved because we need to make things stretch. But at the same time, even though it was forced conservation due to economic circumstances, that's still conservation. I even to this
Mhm.
day, I still if I have to use a plastic bag, I got it under my kitchen sink, and
Mhm.
I'm going to make the best use out of it. I'm not throwing away a pickle jar when it's done. I'm saving it to, there's a way to use everything. And
Oh yeah.
uh, so it's like there's conservation that we can do on every level. We can, like, we also often focus on the, like, the re said the recycle aspect of it and reuse, but also some things we just like try to reduce. For example,
Mhm.
the other like a few months ago, I realized, I have a family of four, two little kids and my wife, and
Mhm.
I realized we were throwing away a trash bag basically every day, taking a trash bag out to the trash can. I was like, how are we actually producing this much trash on a daily basis? One of those like standard size kitchen bag, like 13, 15 gallons or something like that. But I had to take a moment and step back and think about what can I do to actually just make less trash? And
Mhm.
it doesn't take like, massive circle things. I'm not saying that you have to completely change everything about your life tomorrow, but just
Mhm.
having a being cognizant, just trying to recognize how much you're doing individually. But
Mhm.
a lot of my work, like really, is focused on some of the larger pollutants because while we need to do things individually, we can't let these large companies off the hook for what they're doing to our environment as well. But
Right.
there's definitely stuff that we can do on our
Mhm.
level to make a difference.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll talk about the large companies, but I'm in total agreement with you. I kind of drive my wife up the wall sometimes because if I have a plastic cup and I drink out of it, it's like let's wash it out.
Hmm.
We'll keep using the cup until it cracked. And then I had a small jar that I had something in it, and it was empty. I had it around a couple of days, and then I said to my wife, "What should I do with this?" She said, "Throw it away." I said, "You sure you don't want to put like straight pins or you you know you don't want to put bobby pins or something in there?" But I don't call it forced conservation. I really think it was smart conservation, not only for the environment, but people then, black and white, they were reusing stuff because it saved money. And
Hmm.
it's literally how we help to lift ourselves out of poverty because a lot of the things that we're throwing away that can be reused is actually to helping us to waste our resources,
Hmm.
and could actually be helping us to have more monetary assets that can help us. Hey, it may not be a lot of money, but it can buy some school books for your children when they go to college, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
So,
So yeah, but
so-
yeah, let's talk about the big ones because they're the ones that are really doing damage, right?
oh, definitely.
Mhm.
And there's a lot to talk about. Most of like there's a lot of focus on individual contributions at times, and while that does merit attention, we need to do all we can. We can't let these big companies off the hooks. The ones that are the causes of, like, for example, the amount of plastic pollution we have. Like, for example, Coca-Cola steered way into trying to prioritize, individual cleanup when they're the ones who switched from using glass bottles in the first place. I remember seeing,
Mhm.
uh, I'm like, it was a little before my time, but I remember there were commercials for Coca-Cola and these soda companies saying, just throw your plastic on the ground. It doesn't matter. You like, and trying to emphasize that you don't have to recycle recycle glass anymore. And
Mhm.
so like this, all the litter we see is like a directly caused by the manufacturers, as
Mhm.
well as like there's some personal stuff involved as well, but we can't let them off the hook. But most of my work is in the energy space, however, when it comes to talking about, like, the big bads, like and here in South Carolina in the energy space, we talk about the big bads. That's usually talking about Duke Energy and Dominion. Uh,
Mhm.
and to a somewhat lesser degree Santee Cooper, but they're also, they're in there as well. I separate those into those two groups because I say Duke Energy and Dominion, and then Santee Cooper, because Duke Energy and Dominion are investor-owned utilities, and like, and I know you know all this, Rev, but I just want to explain to
Oh
to the
no, explain
audience.
to the
But
audience. That's why we're here to educate them. That's why you're here for.
so, one of my friends said something about, I said, I'm sorry for preaching to the choir. And they said, no, no, no. What we're doing is we're teaching to the choir. We need to make sure we know folks are already with us, but we need to make sure that, we're all on the same page. So, uh, uh, I'm going to use the expression preaching to the choir for a little bit to talk
Mhm.
about the work. But in short, the reason I separated the Duke and Dominion, then Santa Cooper, is because Duke and Dominion are investor-owned utilities. They are like for-profit companies that have come into this space, and they like their bottom line is to make money. They're Fortune 500 companies. I want to say Fortune 150, like they're in the top 150 most like lucrative companies in like the world in some case, either the world or the nation. I can't remember, but
Mm.
It's just to remember, like these are massive corporations whose who their loyalty is to the shareholders, not to the ratepayers. Their customers, the ones they actually serve, are their shareholders, and
Mhm.
providing energy is just how they make money to do so. And well, providing energy and some other things as well. So, Santee Cooper, they're of course they are a power generating company that the majority of co-ops and energy cooperatives here in South Carolina receive power from, but they are owned by the state of South Carolina at the moment, and
Mhm.
so they're a little bit different on who they are accountable to, but they are also out there as a massive polluter. They're the ones with the coal-fired power plants all over the state still too. So, well, them in Dominion. So,
Well, explain how coal-fired plants and these investor-owned utility electric company, how okay, they're making electricity for us. That's good. What would we do without it? But what's the downsides? How are they providing a service, but then also doing a disservice to communities of the planet?
I like the way you put that. When it comes we need power. We cannot like I we cannot really have the society we have without electricity, and that's a given. But when it comes to how we produce power, it's a black box for most people. Most people just know, I'll plug it into the power. I have to begrudgingly pay the power company or whatever they charge, and that's it. But that shouldn't be such a closed box. Here in South Carolina, we have the investor-owned utilities and Santee Cooper and the co-ops. They're mandated monopolies, meaning that we cannot choose who we get power from in South Carolina. With that being said, not only can we not choose how we get power, we have especially for the investor-owned utilities, we have to whatever they do to make power or make sure that we can get power, we have to pay for. Which some people say, yeah, what you do to get power, that's what you pay for. But I didn't want to break that down a little bit more. Not only do we have to pay for, we have to pay for, of course, the power. We have to pay for the wherever the power is generated, meaning the fossil fuel plants or whatever else there is that they're making power from, or nuclear reactors or whatever they're using to generate power. We have to pay for the construction of those. Not only we have to pay for for what makes the power and the power itself, we have to pay for the fuel that's used to power those plants. Not only do we have to pay for the fuel, the power, the facility that makes the power, we have to pay for how they get it to the houses, meaning the lines and the whole entire electric grid. We pay for that. And not only that, when it comes to the investor-owned utilities, we have to pay a little bit extra on top of all of that. It's called their return on equity, meaning the amount that they just get to slap on for their profit. So, yeah, for example, with Duke Energy Carolinas, that's they serve about 660,000 South Carolinians in the upstate. That return on in equity is like currently 9.5%, meaning yeah, they can charge you for all of that stuff that we already talked about that we don't get really that much of an option on. They can also charge you almost 10% extra just for their profit. So,
Wow.
and I know I just do a lot of a lot of information out, but I want to explain how that makes an actual impact and how when it comes to these coal plants and fossil fuel infrastructure, how we're basically paying to make our climate worse. Like I was mentioning, when they build something, we have to pay for it. Meaning, if they want a coal plant, we have to pay
Hmm.
for it. If
Yeah.
it's been approved by a government body that we can talk about a little bit later. And like they when if I had to if I told you whatever you do, I'm going to pay you if I'd ask you to build me whatever type of fence possible, and whatever fence you build for me, I'll pay you for it, but also I'll give you 10% more. Like, would you do like a little? little call them like a little plastic fence, or would you do like a massive wood fence or like a super expensive aluminum fence? If I told you whatever you do, I'm gonna pay you 10% more of.
Oh, I'm gonna build the biggest thing I can since you're paying for it, and I'm gonna make 10% profit. Yeah, I'm
E-
gonna spend as much of your money as I can.
Exactly. And that's how it's set up right now here in South Carolina. Uh, Not only like yes, we need power, but there's a lot of different ways we can get power. This, isn't, turn of the century, 1900 or something like that. It's 2024. There's a lot of ways we can get power, but
Mhm.
the utilities have a incentive to build the most expensive thing possible so they can get the most money back. So that's why we had the whole entire nuclear debacle in the early 2000s and well around 2014, 2015 through 2018 and all that with VC Summer with that nuclear plant that was in Fairfield County.
That
They
bankrupted SCE&G, which
hmm
is why they no longer exist, right?
yeah, pretty much
Mm,
that but
little
even with
bit.
even with them being bankrupted, South Carolina ratepayers still had to pay billions of dollars in increased bills because we were obligated to pay them not only what they spent, but also that percentage extra on top of everything. So even the projects that they failed at, we had to pay through the nose for, and like, and we're still paying for those failures right now. Uh,
And say it
so
again. Say it again, Paul. Two nuclear plants that were not completed and that
mhm.
will never be put in use, right?
Exactly. Two nuclear reactors in Fairfield that are just holes in the ground. We have to pay billions to dig them and billions to fill them back up with dirt.
Mm,
Because, um, and the same thing is happening here in South Carolina, here in the state to this day. The utilities have an vested interest in building the most expensive thing they can and charging us for it. But not only, of course, do they and look, I want to ground it so I'm not just speaking in hypotheticals. Uh, right now, Santee Cooper and Dominion really want to build a gas plant in the Low Country. They want to build it in the Kennedys area, and not only like if this were to be approved and go through the entire process, not only will we be spending easily north of $1 billion to build a massive gas plant. We would then have to pay billions of dollars more, or at least hundreds of millions, to build pipelines across South Carolina to get gas to this facility. Now, and then on top of, the billions of dollars we already paid for the plant, the hundreds of millions that we've paid for these pipelines, which of course would seize land from homeowners and folks all throughout South Carolina and cross-protected wetlands and contaminated environments, we would then have to pay billions of dollars to get the gas. The gas, you have to pay for that too. So we'd be spending billions of dollars on the plant, hundreds of millions to $1 billion on pipeline upgrades, then billions of dollars over the next decade or so in fuel costs that would to fuel the plant. All that to pollute a community with the because people call it because gas ain't clean. It's like
mhm.
people call it natural gas, but that's like calling a lump of coal natural solid, or calling gasoline or diesel fuel natural liquid. It's like
Mhm.
just so you put natural in front of the name, don't mean it's supposed to be out. There's a reason it's underground.
Right.
But so in this case, these utilities not only do are ratepayers on the hook for paying for all this to the benefit of their shareholders, we then have these facilities that are in our communities that are disproportionately black and brown communities. And even if they're not black and brown communities, which isn't the case because they all are in South Carolina, they are low income communities. So it's like they're hitting the folks who are already dealing with issues as it is, like with pollution. It's like there's a
Uh,
reason that asthma rates are higher near gas plants, and that there's Coal plants spew out mercury and heavy metals, and there's soot in the air, particulate matter, and just all type of health consequences and increased cancer risks near these types of facilities, especially around coal. But gas, like I mentioned before, methane gas isn't clean.
Mhm.
It's still doing damage, especially since a lot of it, I mean, since a substantial amount leaks out of the pipelines, and methane is a way more potent of a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide is.
Oh
So
yeah. Mhm.
it's so essentially these we talk about pollution, we talk about the the big bads, for a lack of a better term. These power companies are up there. They're and we need power, but there are ways to do so that have less of an impact on communities, that aren't as expensive for our pocketbooks, and doesn't, have these massive negative consequences. It's like
Mhm.
I mentioned earlier, it's 2024. There are cleaner ways to make energy. In
Mhm.
South Carolina, it's burning hot most half of the year. Like it's going to be 90 degrees what next week, and it's not,
Yeah.
and it's going to stay in the 90s more or less until what, November? I mean October. Well,
So,
so it's like
mhm.
we're in a hot state. And even with that being said, I mean, so we can easily use solar energy.
Oh
And
yeah.
it doesn't even require, to be scorching hot. It's just like solar power is good, like a good avenue 9 days out of 10. And on that 10th day, there's batteries that you can use to store power. There's wind energy. There's just ways that we can produce power in South Carolina that don't rely on us burning fossil fuel. And it's important also to note, South Carolina produces no coal. South Carolina
Mhm.
produces no gas, no methane gas. There's no fracking or anything like that in South Carolina. All this power, all this fuel that we're using, this fossil fuel that we're using to burn and produce power, we're bringing it from out of state. We're getting it
That's right.
from West Virginia. We're getting it from Appalachia, from Illinois, even I heard. So we're seeing these trains of coal and and gas pipelines and gas tankers and etc. All like we're bringing them into the state. So
Yes.
that's money going out the state to other states, and for something that we don't really need. We can produce power locally. Not only
Mhm.
do we make solar panels here in South Carolina, not only do we make wind turbines in South Carolina, we can use them here in South Carolina. And I'm not
Mhm.
just saying that as, an environmentalist. Of course, the green guy is going to say that energy, like clean energy, is the only way to go. I say that because it's economically better. It is the cheapest form of energy we can produce. Like it doesn't get cheaper than solar energy. It doesn't get cheaper than wind. And
Mhm.
so not only is there a health argument for it, there's an economic argument for it. And then there's a energy independence argument where you don't have to rely on on outside forces. We don't have to the cost of methane gas is variable because it's an international market. Like, there's gas being shipped to Europe, gas being shipped all over the place. That's methane gas. So it's like one of the main reasons we had these insane rate increases that I want to talk about a little bit is because like the war in Ukraine. It's like here in South Carolina, like our power bills are impacted by Russia and their invasions. Like
Mhm.
that's kind of wild to me. But we wouldn't have those problems if we had more renewable energy, more clean energy produced right here in South Carolina. We got a lot of land, and there's ways that we can use land, and we have solar panels and not damage the land. Like it's not like solar panels are an oil rig. They like there's agrivoltaics where there's farmers who have their crops that farm under solar panels. There's solar panels on top of parking lots that can be done
Mhm.
unobtrusively. And there's often a case where there's land that needs to rest for about a decade, and you can have solar panels on top of it. Your land, after being farmed for quite some time, could be 20, 30 years of consistent farming. Put solar panels on top of it for 10, 20 years, with the solar company will pay you the money, they'll be paying you rent for the land. After it's done, they'll pack up the solar panels, take them away, and then you have fresh farmland that you can do whatever you want with. Or if you like, I know a few farmers who like they're not doing that much with their land, but they want to keep it in the family. So good situation is, I'm a rent to a solar company. My kids don't really want to farm, but they can have the land afterwards, and it's still in the family. It's just so many upsides. I know I kind of
Okay.
spiraled all off the topic,
No, no,
but
that's okay. I was gonna say because the other thing about when you do solar is that you don't have to do these big, huge, massive um um projects. Some people
mhm.
call it energy independence, some people call it energy democracy. But why don't you talk a little bit about how people can do solar microgrids, how you can get power and be what they call off grid. Why don't you get into some of those things about how we really should be able to make a choice about how we want to get our electricity, which also would mean we would get a chance to choose how much we want to pay for it, right?
hmm So, well, I want to hone like with that. I want to hone in on the phrase to use, energy democracy. And having a choice where we get energy from. Like like we were talking about a little bit earlier, here in South Carolina, we have these mandated monopolies where if you wherever you live, you have to work with this company to get power. One like they're like it should be possible here in South Carolina to make your own power and use it and not be beholden to whoever your zip code is and not have to, you know, be under the grip of Duke Energy Progress or co-op. You here, like I mentioned before, here in South Carolina, it's hot. It's a pretty warm state. The sun's shining, even if it's not shining, it's shining through the clouds. It's not like we're in the Arctic Circle or anything like that. We There are ways to have it so that you can have your own power. Not just like you can use rooftop, or you can have a small solar field like near your house. A lot of people out here, we got land. That's one of the things that you can say about South Carolina. Like, it's not uncommon to find somebody with 2 or 3 acres beside them that they own, and they're like you can like through net metering, like like you can sell power back to the power company and make a profit in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
places. Uh,
Yeah.
and
Explain net metering before you go on forward. You said net metering, but what is that? Because like you said, in a lot of places, I have friends in Washington, they get checks back from their electric company. But why don't you explain net metering and how that works in South Carolina? Because I don't believe they're giving people checks, are they?
so, well, here in South Carolina, oh well, net metering is essentially using the net of the gross and the net, like using the net of what the power produced that you send back to the power company versus power that you need for your home, and recognizing that it's a two-way street when it comes to it can be a two-way street when it comes to energy, where like if you have solar panels and it's the middle of the summer and you're not home, or you're not cranking the AC at max, odds are your house, if you have solar panels, is producing more power than it's using. And with net metering, you can sell power back to the power company at the same or a really comparable rate to the power that you're buying. So there can be months where you've sent more power back to the power company than you've used, and they have to give you a credit or preferably a check for the power that you've generated.
Mhm.
And with that, it offsets the need for these massive plants. So a lot of utilities don't like it because they like building plants.
Mhm.
But like there's a saying, like it's a
Plus, they
quick
want
aside.
all the money. They don't want to pay you any money.
hmm is power companies make a lot of their money in concrete and steel. It's like not just providing power. They want to build these power plants. Like they want to build $2 billion gas plant, because that might mean, $200 million to them that they pocket essentially. So it's like they don't want customers having solar panels and mini solar farms at their house where they have to pay them. They and that's why utilities are fighting net metering. Here in South Carolina, we, depending on where you live, there are net metering programs, but they're almost always under attack by the utilities. Duke doesn't want to pay you for producing power. They want to say we have an energy need. We need to build another $1 billion methane gas plant, or we need to put a pipeline in, and you need to pay us for these pipelines. They want to produce all the power and have a monopoly on power production as well as distribution and transmission and all that good stuff. So they're fighting net metering programs. A lot, like, in it varies between where you are, what type of program you have, but writ large, the utilities don't want this because it gives too much power to the people. It democratizes energy too much when you can produce your own power. And just before, like, I'm talking about net metering and energy democracy, I just want to hone in on the fact that power isn't a luxury. It's not like it was, 100 years ago when a lot of these monopoly utilities, like the structure that governs them, was set up, where there might be, a factory that needs power, but 9 out of 10 folks use kerosene and candles. That's
Right.
where the system is set up from. This isn't something that is a luxury; it's a necessity. Like I like for anyone who, who's doubtful, I would challenge them to take a 3-day weekend and try to do it without using any form of electricity. It's like not camping, trying to live your everyday life without using any power, no batteries, no nothing, and just see how much you can do, how much you can interact in the world, how much you can interact in society. It's like it's almost impossible. Like it's hard to live without internet. It's hard to live without us, like without being able to call someone on the phone, but or you know being able to get news or anything like that. But living without power altogether, it's a no-go. You won't be able to actively engage in society. So, with
Oh
that being
yes.
said, this isn't a luxury. So why are we treating power like it's a luxury? Why are we treating like having these exorbitant costs? We hadn't even touched the energy burden when it comes to power, when it's something that we have to have. The the systems that govern power generation in South Carolina were made basically a century ago and are outdated, where there's only like essentially the rule was if you put the power lines down, you can do whatever you want with a few guardrails. But yeah, that still shouldn't be the case. It's giving, for-profit companies like this, you know, blank check to do whatever they want to ratepayers as long as they can provide X, Y, and Z. That doesn't cut it. Because, if okay, yeah, Duke Energy built the power lines like 20, 30 years ago, but we paid for that. We paid for the upkeep of those lines. We sh I'm sh we shouldn't just be able Duke Energy shouldn't be able to do whatever it wants to us. Santee Cooper shouldn't be able to do whatever it wants to us. Dominion Energy shouldn't be able to do whatever it wants to us because we don't have an option. We should be able to choose. In other states, there are systems where you can choose who you get your power from. The power lines, that's that's really not up for debate on, like, okay, you have like so and so company 100 years ago put power lines in your neighborhood, you're stuck with them. And when they have the option to choose, when they have the option of when the power when power companies exist in a competitive environment, we've seen rates go down. That's what happens when there's competition. Right now, competition is non-existent. And here in South Carolina, that's one of the reasons we have some of the highest power bills in the nation. Um, so right now, I want to say that we have. I'm sorry. Right. Sorry, I forgot a
Right
email just
now,
came through.
we
But
we You
So
said right now we have what in
we
relation
have
to
the
all of this?
about the fourth highest power bills in the nation. It might be fifth, might be third, but we're always in that top rank of highest power bills in the nation, and that's because we have so little choice. And with that, we also have a high energy burden because South Carolina is not the top earning state in the nation. It's like we don't make a ton of money here, but we have some of the highest power bills in the nation. And with that being said, between high power bills and low income, a lot of the money that comes into the average South Carolina uh, resident's house goes out in the power bill. According to
Mm-hmm.
the House and Urban Development HUD, you shouldn't pay more than 6% of your income in power bills. And you know
Oh,
that's
more than 6% for
no
many,
more. Uh,
right?
mm-hmm. For the vast majority of people here in South Carolina, that's just like paying under 6% of your power bill is almost laughable. It's
Mm-hmm.
like we have like I grew up in a house in Florence where well in Effingham where we had $400 or $500 power bills in the 90s, in the late 2000s. Only reason those power bills aren't so high anymore because the house burnt down. It's
Mm-hmm.
and like all over the state. Like it's not unusual to hear someone paying $200-300 in a power bill. And some people say, "Oh, power bill is 180. That's a good power bill." Or your power bill is like 150. You should be really happy. It's like, no, even that is an outlier in the vast majority of the nation. Like we shouldn't be paying like these high like the power bills are so high, but people just become accustomed to them because that's all that we know. But
That's all they know. Mm-hmm.
we really just need to take a moment and make it and like I'd say if you know anyone outside of the state that you look that's outside of South Carolina, any relative that moved to New York or to Virginia or California, even it's like like any other state, ask them what the average power bill is. Like ask them, what's your power bill in the spring, summer, winter, and you'll be shocked to learn how much lower it is than the standard South Carolina bill. It's like, yeah, like, and the thing is about these bills and this high energy burden is it's continuing to rise. Um, right now I'm working with some working around Duke Energy. Sorry, I'm working in the upstate with some folks in the Duke Energy Carolina service territory. They cover about what's it 670 or just under 700,000 customers in the upstate of South Carolina. And they're currently like Duke Energy Carolina is currently requesting a rate increase of what would be 17.5% over a 3-year period. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and they're saying that's for a few different reasons. One is including them cleaning up coal ash that they dumped all over the place in North Carolina, and also just for because they say they don't make enough money uh when it comes to energy and when it comes to their return on equity. So they're trying to increase their return on equity. And keep in mind what we were talking about earlier, the return on equity that a utility company has is just the part of the equation that's pure profit. And right now they're making 9.5% of return on equity. And they say, you know what we need? We need 10.5%. And you know how we're going to do that? By raising your bills 17.5%. And they're trying to phase it in over 3 years, but it's at the end of the day, that's still a massive increase. Shoot,
Mm-hmm.
if they were to be granted this rate increase, that would, which would take full effect in early 2027, then that would mean that between 2022 and 2027, ratepayers' bills would have gone up 37%. So it's
Wow,
like
that's
because
a
they're
whole over third increase in
mm,
what people are paying now.
exactly.
People won't be able to afford that.
Hmm. Like there's
Mhm.
And a lot of folks are on fixed income. A lot of folks, retired or Social Security, and their income month to month isn't going up by a third. It's not even going up by 10 or 20% or anything like that. But these power bills are consistently getting higher and higher. They've already gone up 20% in the last 3 years over there. And the same thing can be said all over the state. Here, I'm a Dominion customer. My power bills have gone up just under 20% alone. And I've heard that Duke Energy Carolinas is already trying to do another rate increase. They're planning they planning to increase rates even more too. Like these power companies, they said they're out to make money from us, and who's going to stop them essentially? Like, keep in mind, we are not cut. Like, we use the term customer sometimes when we talk about paying the power. We're like, I'm a Duke Energy Carolinas customer. I'm a Duke Energy Progress customer. I'm a Dominion Energy customer. And that implies that we're the one they're servicing and we're the one receiving their service. That's not right. We are the ones that they are receiving money from. We are the ones they serve are their shareholders, the
Mhm.
ones that hold stock in these companies, and they're like they have fiduciary duties to them. We are what they like. We are the product. We are who they're selling, not in. So
Selling us.
exactly. So it's like we need to be able to hold these companies accountable. And I know I've been talking a whole lot, but I
But
want to just talk a little bit about how we can hold them accountable and how we can
yeah,
make a difference.
that's what I was going to ask. How can we hold them accountable? How can we make a difference? How can we do solar projects or whatever? How can we hold them accountable? And what can we do?
So,
Mhm.
well, there's two main bodies that I want to talk about when it comes to holding these utilities accountable. To to operate as they do, as I call them, utility monopolies, as they are, they have to have the permission of South Carolina state government to do these things. And because our legislators are a lot of things, but very few of them are experts in energy generation, transmission, and utility pricing. There's a special organization that the legislature made to hold these utilities accountable that's supposed to serve as the watchdog for these utilities. And in
You
this
said
case, it's
supposed to.
supposed to, in theory. The in this case, it's called the South Carolina Public Service Commission. They're here to serve the public and hold these utilities accountable. They do some other stuff too. Like weirdly enough, I think they govern taxis and like telecommunication companies as well, which is kind of odd. But in this case, I want to focus on the fact that they are the ones who the utilities have to justify their plans to, and before they could do what they want to do. Like I was mentioning earlier, Duke Energy Carolina wants to do a rate increase, and they've sent in a request to do a rate increase. That case has to be heard in front of the Public Service Commission because it's kind of like a courtroom. They have these usually 7 commissioners who will hear the case, who come from different walks of, I mean, different expertises usually, but they're all qualified as essentially energy judges. Another way that we refer to the Public Service Commission is the Supreme Court of Energy in South Carolina. And with it being said, like the there are opportunities like in court cases to weigh in, but like they're like judges, so we can't just run up to them on the street, just like you can't run up until like a criminal court judge and tell them what you want them to do. But they give opportunities for folks to weigh in on their matters because while there's like there's lawyers on one side and there's lawyers on the other side, there's a state agency, another state agency that's supposed to be working on behalf of ratepayers. There's a few environmental groups and groups working to decrease these rate increases. And usually the utilities, they're massive Fortune 500 companies. They have their team of lawyers arguing about exactly why the utilities need this more money, this rate increases for reliability and etc. And the Public Service Commission is supposed to weigh those cases, weigh both sides of the argument and figure out what's the best option to provide power for South Carolina, but also make sure that these investor-owned utilities aren't robbing the state blind.
Right.
But and that sounds, an adversarial system. That sounds like, that sounds like a smart idea. And it would be in theory, but like the amount of strings that commissioners have and the amount of things that these massive organizations can do to help tilt the playing field is a little bit ridiculous at times. But one of the ways that we found that folks can have the most impact on is using the ability for the public to comment, the public to testify, the public to speak at these hearings, to actually be able to make it so that the real world consequences of these rate increases and plans to build power plants, or to these plans to build gas pipelines and transmission lines and etc. So folks can these aren't just things happening on paper and in theory. Folks speaking about what the real world impacts of these decisions will have on their lives. We found that makes a difference. We found that when the commission knows that everyday folks are paying attention and are testifying and submitting public comments and the like, we found that they actually listen, and it has an impact on it. It's something like we've seen times where the rate increase isn't like they've requested 20%, they might have got 5%, versus, or times when the commission says, you know what, the community makes a really good point, go back to the drawing board. So like the system we have, like in an ideal world, we would be able to choose our power company. We would be able to choose what type of power we receive, be it clean energy, like solar or wind, or it can be stuff like hydroelectric, which we do have in South Carolina, or we can, or any other fuel generation source, and we'll be able to choose like how we get our power and not be stuck with the only game in town. And hopefully we can get to that day one day. But in the meantime, we need to use every single lever we have available to hold these utilities accountable and make it so that they can't just do whatever they want, because they want to build the most expensive thing possible, because they don't have to worry about the cost of building it. They get more money for building it. They don't have to worry about the fuel, because they can, by law, charge us for whatever it costs to fuel the plant. They can charge it. They can pass that cost along to us. They aren't concerned about what they're building. They're concerned about where they're building it half the time, and they aren't concerned about what type of plant it is. They just want it to be profit. And that's not how that's just a recipe for disaster.
Like VC Summer, right?
Exactly like VC Summer. So where it never produced the liquid energy, but South Carolina ratepayers end up paying billions of dollars. As anyone who was a Santee Cooper, or anyone who's a co-op customer, or SCENG / Dominion Energy now customer, is still paying for that debacle. We will be for a good few more years.
So is there something up? Is there a comment period coming up now where people who are listening need to rally their friends, neighbors, etc., and make sure they are there to comment to say no, we cannot afford to have our power bills increased again?
I'm glad you asked, because that's definitely the case right now. Folks in the upstate, as Duke Energy Carolinas, there's currently called a docket, currently a case that DEC has to raise those rates, and folks can testify or provide written comments to the Public Service Commission to testify why that's a bad idea for South Carolina, the impact that these rates will have on them, their loved ones, and their community, the chilling effect it has for growth in the community, and how folks are already making hard decisions around power as it is, and this will make things even harder. It also, I've seen a few folks writing comments about how this part of this rate increase would be for cleaning up coal ash that they that they mishandled in North Carolina. And keep in mind, coal ash is toxic. It leaks all types of toxic chemicals when it gets in the water table and produces cancer and essentially death. Um, they're making us pay for. They're trying to make us pay for the cost of digging up the coal ash that they dumped improperly or in North Carolina. So not only we're paying for something that happened in another state, we're paying for their mismanagement, their sloppy handling in the first place.
Yes.
So
Having coal
they,
ash ponds that they didn't cover up.
they're unlined coal ash ponds that can leak into the groundwater. They didn't expose them properly. In fact, we dealt with that over here in Duke Energy Progress territory about two years ago. Um, while we ended up having to pay, like we reached a settlement that's us environmentalists and the folks who represent and Duke Energy Progress customer ratepayers and customers with the utility where they had to pay for basically half of it themselves and their shareholders had to pay for it. So it's
Mhm.
like so that's like one of the fights coming that's coming up. It's also Duke Energy, that's Duke Energy Carolina and Duke Energy Progress are doing their long-term planning right now
Mhm.
for both the service territories. And part of that plan is they're saying that they want to build a massive gas plant somewhere else in South Carolina. So we're talking about the other gas plant before that's Dominion and Santa Cooper, but Duke said, you know what, we want the same thing too. They haven't revealed where they want to build it. They haven't revealed how much it costs. They don't haven't revealed where the pipelines would be. All we know is that they said we need a methane gas plant, and we want to put it in South Carolina because we told North Carolina we wouldn't build any more fossil fuel in their state. So we want to build in South Carolina, and you guys don't need to know about it until it's too late to do anything. So
Mhm.
that's like we need to be prepared to take action around these long-term planning, so integrated resource plans that they do in the that's going to be coming up this summer. And
Mhm.
just in case that wasn't enough already between what's happening in Duke Energy Progress and Duke Energy Carolina, Dominion Energy is preparing to file for another rate increase as well. So if you are a Dominion customer, be prepared because I hope we're going to be taking action pretty soon. Contact the Public Service Commission and our legislators about their proposed rate increase and why it's unbearable. Keep in mind, Dominion Energy's already raised rates over almost was it just under 20% in the last 2 years, and they want to
Mhm.
raise rates again. And not only that, they're trying to push back the retirement of the coal plants that they said they're going to retire, and instead of doing clean energy projects that they said they were leaning towards, they're trying to convert gas coal plants to gas plants and just kicking the can down the road instead of doing what's best for our environment and ratepayers. So uh,
Well,
there's never a slow moment in the environmental space. There's
no,
always a fight to have.
yeah, but I don't know if this is your area, but one thing I want to ask about is when people want to build small solar plants, that sometimes there seems to be opposition from the investor-owned utility because you have to connect to their interchange. You have to connect so that you can use their transmission lines and power lines. So how does that work if someone wants to do a small solar farm, say to cover 50 houses in a housing subdivision, excuse me.
Hmm. So, well, in that case, I know I've mentioned a few times that the utilities are mandated monopolies. I guess I never I want to take a slight moment just to explain what I mean by that. They have it's mandated that if you have a house or power generating generated in that service area, it, it has to be them. Like At
Mm,
most, you can do a rooftop solar panel, but it has to be connected to their grid. Uh,
mm.
Under South Carolina law, I'm not sure if you can. I don't believe you can have a small grid that just
Can't do
services.
anything off grid. So you have to
Mm,
be connected to them.
so not if it's yeah, if it's like I've heard like I think I heard of like someone in Pickens having like a cabin in the mountains and they have like some solar panels. It's kind of like one of those doomsday bunker type situations. But
Mm,
if you want like if you want like let's say your church wanted to have like a field of solar panels and provide energy to a low income community completely independent of the power companies, they can
mm.
sue you. They did
Yeah,
that in North
can't do it.
Carolina.
Mm.
That's not legally possible here in South Carolina. And that's something we need to change the laws to
Yeah,
reflect.
I was gonna say that's not right because people are doing that all over the world,
Mm-hmm.
and
So,
and it's not as if they're losing a ton of money, right?
mm-mm. It's like folks should have the ability to decide where they get their power from. They should be able to have independent power. There should be able to be like, neighborhoods and cooperatives that don't get their power from, I mean, don't have to work with Dominion, Santee Cooper, or Duke Energy to get power. Like it'd be a like I've like there's nothing but opportunity and good options when it comes to, what I'm trying to say is there's not a drawback to being able to produce your own power for your community. But
Mhm.
because they're mandated monopolies, they say we have a mandate and we to have this monopoly over all power generated in this state. So if you
Mhm.
want to have power here, you have to pay us. And that's just fundamentally unfair. And that's something we have to change. We have to change it, change the laws and change the
Mhm.
perception and make it a reality.
Yeah, yeah, but I agree with you wholeheartedly because and one time they could put up a pretty good argument when solar was new, and they would say, well, the sun doesn't shine every day. What if there's days when you don't have sunlight? But now there's enough really good batteries that can store up the solar energy for the days when you don't have sunshine, right?
Battery technology, it's not something that's evolving. It's evolved. Like
It's evolved. Yeah.
it's
They have
not.
battery, they have solar battery walls now. Right? You could actually put up a wall or something like a wall on the back of your house and it'll store solar power. But I just thought about if you're charging that much solar power, then you're not providing any power for them, are you?
Mm-mm.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't like it. And not
Yeah.
only are there power walls, like there's industrial scale batteries at this point. I went out to some solar panels out in Hopkins and just a little bit south of Columbia, and they have the like I want to say it's like 20, 40 acres for solar panels, and in the center of it, all of well speckled throughout. They have like these cargo containers. I'm like, what is that? They're like, oh, these are our sodium lithium batteries that charge up and provide power to the community when they're like when they need it. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like there's industrial scale batteries, there's home batteries. Shoot, these electric vehicles that everyone are buying nowadays, those batteries are big enough to provide power back to the house in case of emergency.
Oh
So
yeah. Mhm.
there's there's so many different ways for energy to be it's called distributed energy solutions or distributed energy management. If you're like DSM or something like that, it's talking about all the batteries out there nowadays that can charge up or like and these mini microgrids that might be able to that can be formed because between solar panels and batteries, they're not so reliant on uh a coal plant 50 or 100 miles away ramping up generation when 20 people come home and cut on the air condition. So it's like
Mhm.
there's solutions all over the place, but
Mhm.
the essentially the utilities are stifling this. They
Yeah.
want to be in control of everything. They want to be the only one making money and only one making decisions about energy.
Mhm.
And that's like, and they're stymieing progress. They're standing in the way. They're using the dirtiest ways to produce power and trying to keep us in the dark ages.
right? Because you're seeing corporations, industries that have solar. They have these micro solar um, for solar panels that's powering their plant or their
Hmm.
facility, but homeowners can't do the same thing. And to me, that is something that is an injustice, and really the courts need to deal with that. But we've run out of time. I told you when we started we might have to do a part two, which you did not.
So I'm
so
all for it.
yeah, so why don't you we are to so why don't you tell folks how they can contact you and the Sierra Club, and especially if they want to know more about the comment period and how people power. There's electric power, but people power still runs this country. So tell folks how they can reach out to you, Paul.
All right. Well, you can reach me at paul.black@sierraclub.org. That's paul.black@sierraclub.org. Shoot me an email, or you can give me a phone call even at 843-496-0860. I'd be happy to talk with you. And, like Rev said, all power to the people.
All right. I hear you. All power to the people. And so good, I tell you, Paul, to have a young man who is working hard to make the world and communities a better place. And if you want to get in touch with me, Reverend Leo Woodbury, you can reach me at info@newalphacdc.com. Don't forget to go to our website and subscribe to our EJ Today magazine, www.newalphacdc.com, or call me at the church where I'm still privileged and blessed to pastor Kingdom Living Temple, 705 South Irby Street in the Magic City of Florence. Telephone number 843-799-0740. So thank you once again, Paul Black. And thank you for tuning in to the Leo and Larry show. Because if you want to know the things you need to know and the places where you need to go, tune in to the Leo and Larry show. God bless.